This is Let's Talk Big, the big read with Jane Berger and Jen Hazel. The Owens Community College Campus Big Read is taking place now and throughout the semester, with the goal of bringing awareness of different perspectives through books. The Campus Read book is A Little Less Broken, How an Autism Diagnosis Finally Made Me Whole by Marian Schembari. It's the story of one woman's decades-long journey to a diagnosis of autism and the barriers that keep too many neurodivergent people from knowing their true selves. Now, sharing passages, topics, and events related to the book are Director of Library Services, Jane Berger, and Professor of English, Jen Hazel.
Welcome to Let's Talk Big. I'm Jen Hazel, and I have with me
Jane Berger
and
Chris Hendricks.
All right, Jane, do you have a passage?
Nope. No, of course I do. All righty, we're just going to dive right in. Here's the good news. At 36, I now understand what's happening and why. I can pull out my noise-canceling headphones and turn on my white noise playlist, which drowns out everything but the voice in my head, allowing me to do what I do best, hyper-focus on my interests for hours at a time. The bad news is that you can make accommodations only if you've identified the problem. Neither I nor my parents had the language to talk about what was happening, so at 13, all I knew was what I was told, and there are only so many times you can tell a girl she's broken before she starts to believe it. This leads perfectly into our guest today is Chris Hendricks, the director of our Disability Resources area. So, Tell us what you know. We've got students who, come here who may have had accommodations all through high school, and that has been done by a parent or by a school counselor, and now here they are on their own, and what do they do?
Well, and thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
But I think a lot of this is an educational thing because a lot of times students just believe that an IEP follows them right over from high school, and now I have accommodations just like I did when I was in high school, and that's not the case. They have to self-initiate that process at the college level. And then when we're talking about like somebody that has a late-term diagnosis or that sort of thing where they may not even have had a past diagnosis, then they go through a whole other process of, now what do I do? And it's almost a sense of, almost a grieving process, I guess, is kind of a way to describe it because,
Sure.
That whole first phase is, I'm not broken. Why,
Right.
why do I have these flaws? But I don't understand why because I don't have a
Right.
diagnosis.
Yep. And
So.
if they don't have a diagnosis, but they are, struggling a little bit, how would they go about getting diagnosed or checking to see if there's a diagnosis to be had?
There's a few different ways we can do that. I mean, that depending on the disability itself, with counseling services, or if they have their own counselor that they've gone to that could provide a diagnosis or even a medical verification from a doctor diagnosis. Basically, to provide services, we just need diagnosed proof of documentation of a disability. Once we have that, then we can work towards providing accommodations.
Perfect.
So.
And so, Chris, if someone they have a medical diagnosis or they have an IEP and they're coming here, how do they start that process with you? What should they do? And I'm assuming you're going to tell us that even if you think you don't need it, it's very good to have it.
Yes.
Because then you have it on record for a time that you might need it. Because some classes, like I often have students in my classes who it's like a sigh of relief once they realize that none of my tests are timed. And I mean,
Exactly,
given that I
yeah.
teach like humanities and literature, it's like it's more about the writing, so there isn't a
Right.
point to say like, let's write fast. I want you to have time to think about it.
Right.
But in other classes, like it is more necessary that
Right.
the test is timed. But like, so what is the process? What do they do?
Well, and I think a lot of this goes back to what I always had in K-12 environment again, and typically if they have tests read or extended time, that sort of thing, everybody goes in a room and everybody gets it read and everybody has to kind of. And at the college level, one of the first things we tell them is we provide them with a toolbox. They're adults, they can pick and choose when they need to use that particular tool. So if they don't need a test read or a calculator or whatever it is, they're fine, then so be it, they don't use it. So we make sure we make that really clear that, you know, you are set up with a set of accommodations, but you don't have to use them. But it's better to actually have them in your back pocket in case you would need it someday. And so we make that real clear with the students. And also it's just kind of a learning curve because they're used to just, you know, we all have to go get our test read and they don't like that sometimes, so they don't want to do it.
Right.
You know, at this level, it's done in headphones and they listen to the tests and they get to pick and choose and, you know, it's more of a self-advocacy and I'm not used to that. They have to learn to do that a little bit more.
Yeah, and which I think is hard, especially like it's not like both of my children are on IEPs. It's not like they come with me to the IEP meeting.
Right.
These things
Exactly.
just
Correct.
happen. Now they're
Right.
younger, but
Right.
these things just happen.
Well,
Yes.
even at the high school level, I've been through this, and
Right, like it's-
she was not there, she was in
Right.
class.
Right,
Yeah.
like
So-
it just
Yeah,
happened.
and that's sad because a lot of times I taught junior high for many years and written many, many IEPs and yeah, I always let my students be involved in the process and let them know that they have goals and objectives and what, you know. And some of the students that come to us today will say, well, I was on that IEP thing, you know, I don't even know
Right.
that they were getting assistance or
Right.
accommodations or
Or
my
they didn't
mom
know that
used
it
to
was
make
any
me go
different.
or, you know.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
So,
They just thought it was
Right.
like that was available.
Yep.
So can someone just stop in the office? Do they call? Do they send an email? Do they go to the website? Is there a spot
all
on the
the
website?
above.
All of the above.
All the above. We have everything very digital nowadays. There's an
Okay.
intake form on the website, and it even allows them to upload documentation if they have it. If they don't, we have a consent form that we can reach out and have IEPs faxed over, and we also have a medical form that they can take to a provider, be it a counselor or a doctor or whatever it is. So,
Okay, so how long does it take, Chris, for, like, say that I come to the office and I have all of my paperwork in order, how long does it take for those accommodations to then become?
typically we can get them done the same sitting a lot of times.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
we can do
Okay.
it almost immediately. As soon as I get the documentation, I can review it with the student. We talk about what was helpful in the past. You know, we go by 3 principles, you know, a history of accommodation, professional judgment, and then actual documentation. And usually, once it's in the system, they're up and running the same day.
Okay, and then, say it would happen in the middle of a semester, then the instructor would get a letter, or it's not a letter anymore, we have to,
An email.
Right.
that just changed a little bit, but
Right.
we would get information on that, and then and why the setting it up ahead of time is important is like the instructor has to honor it from the point they get that information, not from the
Yes,
Not
nothing's
retroactive.
retroactive.
not
Yeah.
retroactive.
Yeah.
So that's
So,
why I
yes.
think that sometimes it's really important that
Get them
students.
started as soon as possible.
Right, like you come here,
Right.
like and maybe after you do orientation, you come
That's
by
your
and get
first
that
stop.
set.
Yep.
Yeah, just because in case you need it, and
Yep.
then it's there.
Yep.
And so I think sometimes students don't understand the retroactive
Right,
part.
yes.
So I think that is super great. So Chris, like if I was an instructor and I have a student who just sent me an IEP, how can I help them get to you? Like what is should I just tell them? Like what can we do there?
Well, it's, the student has to self-initiate. So even if, and it's in all the syllabuses, and an instructor on the first day can say, you know, if you need assistance, if you had an IEP before, if you ever had accommodations, make sure you go visit the Disability Resource Center and that sort of thing, but, you know, they have to initiate it on their own. So
Okay.
I can't like reach out to a student just because I have a name come across my desk, but if the student comes to us, then we can
You can do something.
definitely get them in there and get the intake going and get them set up. But, yeah, they have to initiate the process on their own.
Through you, not through an instructor.
Right, yes.
Right,
The
so
student
I
has to
can't-
physically come in and.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can't honor if someone gives me an IEP. Yes,
That's
they
not
have to
legally,
have.
and I kind
Right.
of changed that a little bit in the new system now. I actually call it a disability resource plan. So it actually has a name now, and so because they still come in and say, my IEP, I'm like, you don't have an IEP anymore. You now have a
You've
disability resource
graduated.
plan, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
No, and
And
that's
that's
great.
hard,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
it
hard
is
to
hard.
make that distinction if
right.
you've had one for several years.
Oh, yeah.
That's the language you know.
So,
Right, and that's good to know that you've called it something, so a disability resource plan, that
yes,
is
that's our new lingo for it.
fantastic. So even thinking about a little bit with the passage too, like I think what's interesting about this too, and I think this happens I think like, well, the author is an example of this, but I think this happens a lot, like people suspect there's something that's different,
Right.
but they don't have the language then to talk about it and doing that. So I just think it's super important to think like, you know, if you do suspect something or you feel a certain way, to search that out, because it's nothing but help in the same way that if you're diabetic, like if you and you need insulin,
Exactly.
Right.
you need that to exist.
Correct.
And to help, you know.
Yep.
Yes. So I think that's a super important thing to look at, and it is. I think that's a key piece that she gets at, is something was off but didn't have the language.
Right.
Yep. And I can attest to that. I mean, we've had many conversations. My youngest daughter, we just spoiled her, and she was high-spirited, and we just, that's just the way she is. It's just the way she is. When, you know, in reality, she could have probably benefited. She does have ADHD. We don't know if she has anything else, but, and now she's an adult, so now she's on her own.
Well, and the author, I'm not sure, I don't remember where specifically she talked about like the ESP diagnosis too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Which was in there, which is interesting. Like, we don't quite have a word for it, but we have
Correct.
this,
Yeah.
which isn't really,
Right.
like a diagnosis or whatever. But I think, or that's what is said. It's not necessarily a diagnosis, but
But more good news, you know, she said good news, bad news, and I think more good news is that there is always research happening. There's always new things that are being looked at and, you know, learned. And so it's just very fluid in the process of this. So be your own best advocate is probably the best advice right now.
Exactly.
If you're struggling, there is no need.
right, absolutely. And I think one of the other interesting things, or one of the other things I'd like to ask you, Chris, too, is a little bit about like someone in the author's shoes who was diagnosed later. What are some suggestions that you would give them? You know,
that's a good.
because
Well,
I think that's hard.
It is hard.
I think it's, like I said, it's almost a grieving process at first, because it's not a flaw. It's not a
Right.
thing that you're broken, like the author says. And a lot of people will say, you know, why didn't it catch us sooner? Why didn't nobody catch this? And, you know, so I think that whole next phase is, okay, now we have a diagnosis. Now we have something to work with. Now we can sit down and work on setting up a plan to provide accommodations. And being able to get you to the point where you can cope with it and learn to adapt and accommodate.
Yep.
I think that's important, because, you know, without that diagnosis, and many times people just feel like there's something wrong, but they don't know why.
Right,
So-
and I just don't feel like everyone else.
Right.
Right.
I think I've read that
Exactly.
in several of the
Yep.
books. Like, I don't feel like everyone else.
Yep.
Like, you know.
When in reality, everyone else also has, you know, something that makes them, you know, unique. I hate to, you know, use that word all the time, but, you know, when in one of our previous podcasts we were talking about stimming, and I think, wow, you know, I twirl my hair, I
Oh,
bounce
yeah.
my knee, you know.
We all do something.
We all
that-
have, yeah,
right.
there's something about each one of us, I think, but it's just how we look at it and how we brush it off as, well, that's, you know, I just release extra energy that way. And in some cases, that's fine, and in other cases, though, you need to look a little bit deeper.
Right. Well, I think advances in diagnosis and earlier detection and those sorts of things are much better now. My brother is deaf and autistic, basically, and up until 4, they didn't even diagnose him as deaf. They just thought he was autistic because he didn't communicate.
Yeah.
Now babies, they can tell just by hooking them up to some sort of monitoring
they put
devices.
something in
and-
their ear or
you know what I mean?
something.
So
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
the difference of, okay, if we would have caught this 20 years ago as opposed to later in life, there could have been a lot more accommodation provided
Sure.
earlier.
Right, right.
So
That's, yep,
that's part of the,
yeah.
you know.
Well, that's why we're here doing what we do, so we can educate, spread the word. If anybody has any questions, hopefully we're giving enough tools to everyone out there to at least have a starting point.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think that'll do it for us today.
Okay.
Chris, thanks for being here. So, on behalf of myself, Jane Berger, keep talking big.
This has been Let's Talk Big. Catch Let's Talk Big anytime on the RSS feed or the Owens Outcome Plus YouTube channel. Be sure to like and subscribe. Join us again for Let's Talk Big, the big read with Jane Berger and Jen Hazel.